Do Spurs need a new left back? That is what we are going to explore today. It's been reported that Destiny Udogie has picked up a slight injury. I don't think it's a major one. Regardless of that, we are pretty much left with only one left back in the squad at the moment, and that is Udogie, one natural left back, that is. Ben Davies, obviously formerly a left back. I don't think he really has the legs to do that anymore. He's also probably not at the quality we're looking for right now. So, are there potential solutions to this issue in the squad, or do we need to dip into the market? And that's what we're going to explore today. So, if we just look at Destiny Udogie's profile itself, I think we are all kind of familiar of what Destiny Udogie is as a player. He's a powerful player who can dominate a whole flank with his athleticism, his ball carrying ability. He's so strong. He's so good in duels. He's really good at 1v1 defensively. He's good at carrying into space. And if we kind of look at how we've been setting up so far under Frank, I think it would be something along the lines of this, where you have Porro tucking in here, making that back three, and Udogie having the license to really bomb up and down that flank, using that athleticism that we know he has. So, how do we kind of deputize Udogie or replace him when he's injured? I want to start by looking at Djed Spence. Now, personally, I've always preferred watching Djed Spence at left back than right back, and this is for a few reasons that we're going to explore. Djed Spence is a fantastic technical player, powerful as well, combined with that technical ability. So he's a really, really complete, well-rounded fullback that can play a numerous amount of roles. He's just a really complete player in general, not just fullback. So if we look at some of these sort of stills of him that I've captured from some of his matches at playing left back, I think the reason I really like Spence at left back is because of how comfortable he is at driving infield. And I think part of this sort of role for him at left back would be starting on the touchline. So you'd have him sort of starting on these areas, but with the freedom to then travel infield with those real powerful carries that he has. Spence is someone who is so flexible and so able to receive the ball in all types of areas. He's happy to receive it deep here, to receive it on the wide flanks, but due to his sort of right-footedness, he's always going to want to come infield. So I do think he's pretty good at keeping that width off the ball, but then obviously once he receives it, he is going to want to drift inside with it, with that dribbling ability he has. He is also very, very good at combining, and that is one of the major reasons I like him at left back, because it creates those angles for him to drift inside and combine with teammates. Now here, you see him with Maddison. He's really good at linking up with players in field. And that really leans itself to playing in that left back role because of the angles that it creates. So obviously he's coming onto a stronger foot, and that really allows him to combine in field pretty much. So he could play a 1-2 with the left winger here. He might come inside and drive a pass into the number 10. Whereas if you had him at right back, those angles really aren't as favourable. Just because of a right footer, it's definitely not as easy to play in that way. Because of how much you kind of telegraph it, you've only got sort of one direction to go in on that right foot. Whereas if you're on the left, you basically have more angles. You can open your whole body up, and it favours you because you can open up the whole pitch pretty much, if that makes sense. And some people might have the concern that, okay, so if we have, let's say a winger tucking in here, and that touchline is all sort of free, you want that overlapping fullback. That might be of a concern, as Spence is obviously not left-footed. But I did look at some of Spence's clips, and he is capable of definitely running up the touchline and to the byline and getting crosses in. This is him against Man United last season. And he was more than capable of beating a player 1v1 because of that power, that dribbling ability, that technical ability. And he actually gets to the byline here and puts in a pretty strong cross with his left foot. I think what else leans into this with Spence is the ability for him to play that trivela pass, that outside of the foot pass, which really is a string to his bow that not many fullbacks will have. And that we've seen the likes of Cancelo use that really well when they get to the byline, and that favours a right footer obviously on the left flank. So I think those are some real real points to note about Spence at left back. And just because of this ability to combine and really drive in field, I really like him on the left. And it's not necessarily the perfect fit because of what I said about this fullback wanting to keep the width. And you want Spence to drift into these areas, but I really do think he's capable of doing this. I do think at times it will require the left winger to potentially pull out wide to open up these spaces for Spence to come and operate in. So you may want to play someone like Udogie out here who's happy to hug the touchline and allow Spence to exploit that space. And then at times, obviously, the left winger can tuck in and Spence can go out the outside. You probably want a bit more freedom than what we saw with Udogie in that first friendly where he was just constantly bombing up and down. So that's Spence. And I also think, obviously, we talked about Porro playing this more deeper role. I also think Spence, because he's so complete, can also do that role. He's really, really tidy in tight areas, really comfortable to be pressed, and really good at combining to get out of pressure. He's so strong as well. He can protect the ball really well. So he's really good at having that security in the build-up phase, as well as if the ball does get turned over, that 1v1 defending the channels. Spence is excellent at that. And I think in general, Spence is just a really complete player. So I see him as being really comfortable at basically playing at either fullback role to a really, really high level. And this is a sort of example of the areas I'm talking about when he plays that deeper fullback role. This kind of situation will never faze him. He's really calm, composed. He'll look to turn out and play in tight areas. And I think that nothing really will faze him regardless of what instructions you give him. He's just such a rounded player. Now, the next person I obviously want to speak about is Micky van der Ven. Now, completely different type of player to Djed Spence, as we all know. Predominantly played at centre-back for us. He did play in one game, I believe, for us at left-back against Man City. I think it was 2 seasons ago now. And this kind of player would be a different way of playing a fullback, but one that I think could really be of use, and one that I do think Frank will very much consider, and there's a few reasons for that which we'll go into. So if we have a look at some of that footage of him playing at fullback, if I just move myself out of the way, this is the sort of position he was picking up. So obviously building that back three in possession to protect from counterattacks. Obviously we know how quick Micky van der Ven is, and that is one of probably his main skill, and giving that safety blanket to a back three is really, really useful. So that's the sort of position I'd expect him to pick up if he was playing left back. So if we just look at that on the tactics board. So it would be much more of this, him being that third centre back. So you'd probably want your right back to be the more advanced one here, whether that's Porro, whether that's Spence, both of them capable of that, I believe. And you probably want your winger on the right side to be more of an inside player. Kudus can easily do this. If you want Johnson to sort of play on the shoulder of the striker, you can do that as well. And then you probably want your left winger to be able to drop a little bit deeper just to be able to pick up the ball here. But also you want him also to be in advanced areas as well. Now, if we go into some of Van der Ven's clips at fullback, I think Van der Ven at left back, this is not the greatest obviously sample size. It was one game, and the issue with this game itself is that Van der Ven was pressed a lot. Now, I don't think Van der Ven is necessarily great under pressure, and this is where some of my concerns with Van der Ven at left back come. I think he's quite stiff in terms of his hip movements. I think he's a great straight line runner. I don't think he's necessarily a great person at changing direction, and that can harm him both in and out of possession. I think in possession, as you see here, he's got this one type of pass where he doesn't really have to rotate his hips that much, and he can really bend it down the line, which he does here excellently. But I think if you're going to ask him to, let's say, play into that space there where Son is, it's going to be a little bit more uncomfortable for him, and he might potentially give the ball away. What you do get with Van der Ven, though, at left back is that recovery pace. And that is just an extra safety blanket that is brilliant in defensive transitions, as we know. Obviously, here you see Kyle Walker clearing. Kyle Walker, as we know, is rapid, and Van der Ven ends up making up the ground and getting in there to block him. That is one thing that we can really use Van der Ven in that situation. So, if we're caught up here really high, And we've still got that back three here with Van de Ven covering there, and the ball gets turned over. There's a lot of space for Van de Ven to manage here, and I think he's probably one of the best in the world at doing that. So that's a real nice safety blanket that we have there. I think the slight issue with this defensive game at left back is probably in a bit more settled play, I would say, or maybe not even settled play, but when he can get isolated out wide. And this is where I talk about the stiffness of his hips. So you might have a really tricky winger here. Let's just put in, ignore the number here, and he's going to want to sort of turn him inside out. And I think Van de Ven here, his stiffness can harm him. We've seen him get turned inside out a couple times. I think Isak did it to him pretty badly, to be fair. And so that might be a slight concern with Van de Ven. I think his positional awareness is great. It's just when he does get isolated, you might need the left centre-back to really go out and just be there as protection. But overall, I think Van de Ven's a great option. I think one of the main reasons for this as well is because, let's say we're building in this 3 with Van de Ven at left centre-back. Sorry, not left centre-back, left back, but forming that back 3 there. And this is the way, obviously, we'd probably set up. You'd want the other fullback much higher. Like I said, the right winger in here. And obviously, the left winger would be out here. You might want him to drop deep at times. But this does leave that big space that I've spoken about between the sort of deeper fullback and the winger. Now, we know what Van de Ven is really good at is these carries. These long, quick carries. Once he's in his stride, he is unstoppable. We saw that against Man United when he made that a crazy assist for Brennan Johnson, and once he gets in his stride, you can't really stop him. Now, with this space that's left by our shape, with our winger really playing high, Van de Ven, like I said, is not necessarily the best creative passer, but when the teams are kind of sitting off and leaving this big space, this is what Van de Ven can really gallop into and commit players and probably beat players, but also commit players and then lay it off more simple to, let's say, a number 10 or the winger here. I think that's something that would be really key with Van de Ven at left back. His ability to really carry could be game breaking pretty much. I think there's also one other reason that I think Van de Ven might be preferred at left back by Frank, and that is the importance of box defending. Now, Frank is so big on being able to dominate both boxes, and this is one of Van de Ven's weaknesses. Van de Ven, despite being a real unit, a real athletic player, he struggles in the air. And so I think Frank has, at times in the friendlies so far, probably experimented more than maybe people expected him to, playing Vuskovic, playing Danso, 2 elite players in the air. And I think that is part of the reason that maybe we'll see Van de Ven more at left back this season, because Frank wants centre-backs to really dominate aerially and command their box. And Van de Ven is not that. He's great when he's playing high up and he can cover the space. But if you have to defend deep at times, he's going to struggle. So that is pretty much where I'm at on Van de Ven and the abilities that he has at left back and what we'd kind of command from him playing there and what we'd maybe be missing. I think obviously that passing ability does lack a little bit. So when pressed, he might struggle to play through the press. But when he is given a bit of space, those carries could be really effective. If we are going to dip into the market, I think I've come to the conclusion now that I'd probably look for someone who's pretty much like for like with Udogie, because of what I've mentioned with Spence, Van de Ven. They're quite different profiles from Udogie and they can provide us with a lot of different things. But I think if we were going to bring someone in, you'd want someone who can perform what Udogie can, because we've already got in the squad players who can do other things, like Van de Ven tuck in the third centre-back. I think Spence can tuck in as a third centre-back, or plays more inverted wing-back where he starts wide and travels inside. This would probably require a decent fee because the market is not great for these players. But I think the first one we can look at is Anthony Robinson. Now, Anthony Robinson for me is not my favourite player. I think he's quite a basic footballer, but where he does shine is athletically and in the final third in terms of his delivery into the box. And so if we do have him in that left back, just put him in. you're going to get a lot of what Udogie provides, and that can really give Udogie some rest that he probably will need. Really providing that ability to dominate a flank physically, really able to run all game up and down the flank, is constantly going to provide those overlaps to whether that's Tell or whoever that is in left wing. And his final third delivery is also excellent, which I think we need more of. I think Udogie lacks here. So getting a really good crosser could be really key to providing that extra sort of attribute that we miss at times. And in certain games where we might need to lean on more crossing ability, you're going to want someone like Robinson, who's just excellent there. I think where Robinson may struggle is, again, when we're pressed. So if we're here and we're getting a lot of pressure, I think Robinson can panic. His lack of technique can harm him. He might pass the ball out of play. He's not very good in those tight areas, but when there's turf to kind of cover, he's excellent there. So that is Anthony Robinson, my first choice of left back. My second option after Robinson would be Gutierrez of Girona, 23 years old, I believe. He is a fantastic crosser of the ball, which is where I compare him to Robinson. They are similar in some ways, and I think both of them are great crossers. I think Gutierrez is an even better crosser, just due to his ability to really invite those crosses, kind of entice the keeper to come and get it, but really then it curls away and allows someone to nod it in. He's just an excellent technical striker of the ball. And once you get him in these crossing areas, he can put in just peaches and peaches of crosses. My main issue with Gutierrez is probably his physical profile. I think in the Premier League, he may struggle to get that constant separation to allow for those crosses. And that is a concern. Obviously, that would require separation being created by other players. So if you, let's say, have the left winger here who drifts inside, commits maybe the fullback, and then suddenly Gutierrez goes on the charge and he can reverse a pass out, and that separation is almost created by the movement the winger's made, and then once that obviously receives, he can just take a quick touch and whip it. Whereas he may struggle more if he's carrying the ball and then has to do a little trick and beat the fullback and then cross it. I don't think that's necessarily in his skill set. However, I do think he'd be better in deep areas than Robinson. So in times where we're pressing, he can lean into his technical ability. He can combine much better. He'll be able to find these passes with more accuracy, with more consistency. And so that's the sort of profile I'd be weighing up, basically. Quite similar players, but obviously not the same. They both have their pros, their cons. And as I said, the left back market is not great. So it pretty much comes down to what the club want to do. I think they have some ready-made profiles who can play left back to a great level, but they don't provide everything. And they definitely don't provide what Udogie will provide when he is out. So it's down to the club what they want to do with that left back profile. I do think both Spence and Van de Ven should get meaningful minutes here over the course of the season because of what they can offer. It's not just a case of them filling in. It's a case of them really providing something different that Frank might want in certain games. And I think the last thing to quickly note is this might leave us a little bit light at right back, because if Spence becomes the full-time deputy to Udogie and Udogie might get injured, and then Spence is really playing all his minutes at left back, then it leaves Porro light, and it leaves Porro pretty much playing every game at right back. However, this is where I think Gray can really come in and shine because of his ability to play this deeper role, which I've talked about on my TikTok, but his ability to play those passes and make from deep is something that we've really missed with Porro or Romero being out. You really need a deep passer. We missed that in midfield. We know that, but also Gray is capable of that. So I think that is something just to add that we can potentially explore further down the line. Because the fact that we have Porro potentially playing much higher, if we do have someone like Van de Ven at left back, this does remove the ability for us to create from deep, because Porro was doing a lot of that when he played there. So if he's higher, who's going to progress the ball? And a lot of the sort of slack will fall on Romero, and which is why it's so important for us to, as I've been banging on about, get that deep passer in midfield. But yeah, that's where I'm at with the left back situation. If you liked the video, please do subscribe. Please comment down below what you want to see next, and please do like the video as it helps us push across the people that haven't seen us before. But yeah, that's the left back situation. Also comment down below who you think we should sign at left back, because I obviously haven't covered every left back on the market. There are a few more. But thanks for watching, and come on you Spurs.